Hey friends, welcome to Homegrown Florida. I'm Katrina, and today we are going to be coming along for a day in the life adventure. We are going to be harvesting some fresh parsley from the garden today so we can make some chimichurri sauce. Then we're going to can some cranberries to make a cranberry sauce. I'm having reminiscence of Thanksgiving. And then also we're going to be making some amazing mouth-watering strawberry cheesecake cookies. So hang out with me today in the garden and in the kitchen. We're gonna have a lot of fun. It's a beautiful morning, and the first thing I'm going to do is head out to this garden to pick some fresh parsley. Parsley is a really versatile herb that's perfect for making all kinds of sauces, but today I'm going to use it to make a classic chimichurri sauce. So as you can see, I have a bit of an overgrowth of parsley here, so we are going to cut it down almost all the way. Now I'm not cutting it down all the way because I do know that this is a time of year for swallowtail butterflies, and I really love them. I think they're so beautiful, and I don't want to disrupt their little caterpillars. So I'm going to keep an eye out as I'm cutting this down to make sure that I don't accidentally, cut down one where one is living, or if it is in its stage of turning into a butterfly. So I'm going to try to be very careful, and I'm also going to leave some of the plant behind so that way, they have a place to live if they haven't arrived yet. You'll also notice that I am doing my harvest out here in a bucket rather than in my kitchen where you guys are probably used to seeing me. And that is because stink bugs have arrived. Oh, beyond the lubers, stink bugs are like my nemesis. And so stink bugs, you don't want to get them in your house. So this time of year, all the way until I reach fall and these guys kind of calm down, I do most of my harvest out in the garden. I do my cleaning, my washing, and everything so that way I don't accidentally bring these guys in the house. I have done that before. You do not want stink bugs inside your house. It's kind of in their name, right? They stink. Oh gosh, do they smell? I hate the smell of them. So as you can see here, I have left a ton for the butterflies, and this, believe it or not, will grow back super fast. I've already harvested a bunch of it to make my own Italian seasoning. So let's get all this cut off. So the last thing we're going to need is a little red pepper. So I'm headed over to the pepper bed, and we are going to harvest the one and only pepper that I have ready, and it is a red cherry pepper because we're going to put this in our chimichurri sauce. We have our tiny little red cherry pepper, and now we're going to grab our parsley, get inside, and get this sauce made. So the first thing that we're going to get done is get this bucket, actual bucket of parsley, strained and wrung out so that there's not any more liquid left in it, and then we're going to dry them on some towels. Thankfully, when we were cutting this parsley, I did not find any swallowtail butterfly caterpillars, and I also did not find any stink bugs, which is awesome. Okay, so we got this all spread out. We're going to grab another towel, And we're going to lay this across. And we really want to get all the moisture out of here that we can. So while this dries, we're going to move on to our second item that we're going to be doing, which is we're going to be canning cranberry sauce. I know it's not Thanksgiving, but we absolutely love cranberry sauce. We use it all year round. We put it in, you know, it's its own side dish, of course. We also like to put it on our stuffing. We put it in paninis or sandwiches, wraps, all kinds of things. So the first thing that we need to get is our cranberries. Now, I did get these cranberries back during Thanksgiving. They actually had a buy one, get one free sale. So I bought these and another bag. And the other bag was actually what we ate for Thanksgiving. I made this exact recipe, but I didn't can it because I just didn't have time. As you can imagine, Thanksgiving gets very, very busy. So I didn't have necessarily the time to get these all cooked and canned. So today we're going to do that. So we're just going to pour our frozen cranberries into this pot. And then the next thing that we're going to need is maple syrup. And we're going to pour 1 full cup of the maple syrup in with the cranberries. Now, you don't have to use maple syrup. If you would prefer, you can use sugar, you can use honey, you know, any of those sweeteners. I think some people even use stevia. So you're more than welcome to do that. I particularly like the taste of maple syrup for my cranberry sauce. I think it adds a little extra something. The only other thing that we're going to be adding is some lemon juice. Now, this is not typical. Typically, I add orange juice, but I am completely out of oranges. So I'm just going to use a little bit of lemon juice. The cranberries are tart and acidic enough that they don't really need the lemon juice for canning. But I just like that freshness taste. Now you could also add things like nutmeg, cinnamon, allspice, all those things would be absolutely wonderful in this. But that's actually all that I'm going to do for these cranberries. So now we're just going to turn the heat on pretty high, and we're going to let those cranberries break down. So they're going to cook for about 15 minutes. I'm not going to be adding any pectin to this recipe because not only are they good acidic wise for canning, but they're also good pectin wise. They will create their own pectin, and that will mean that they will thicken up, or the sauce will thicken up all on its own. And we'll check that before we can it just to make sure we get the right consistency that we want. While we wait for those cranberries to come up to temperature, we're going to put our glass jars in this pot. This is just a regular pot. Now you can use a canning pot, you can use a pressure canner, all kinds of things to can in, but today I'm just going to use a regular pot. And what I have down in there is like a little silicone trivet. And that trivet is going to keep those jars from touching the bottom, because touching the bottom means that they'll get overly heated and it usually cracks or breaks the jar, and then you've basically ruined your canning. So make sure to put something down on the bottom. All the things that I used today for canning, including that little silicone trivet, I'll put down into the description below so that if you guys want to get it for your canning experience, you can absolutely do that. You kind of have to babysit the cranberry sauce a little bit because it gets very hot very quick. I have this set on low and it is still bubbling pretty hard, but the cool part is it's already starting to get very thick, but those cranberries haven't broken down all the way yet. There's still a lot of thinness to the sauce, so we're just gonna keep bubbling away. It's only been 5 minutes. So we have reached the perfect consistency. Check that out. It is definitely all thick. That is exactly what we needed. So we're going to turn the heat off on this, and we are going to get our jars out of here. They are just warmed up, you know, not boiling yet. So let's get these jars out. We're going to dump the water, and then we're going to fill them up with cranberry sauce. So now we're just going to ladle this very hot, be careful, but very hot cranberry sauce into our jars, and we're going to leave a 1/4 inch headspace. If you're not familiar with headspaces, let me just show you really quick. The headspace, this line right here, is 1 inch. Half of that is going to be the 1/2 inch, and then 1/4 of that is going to be half of the 1/2 inch. So it's the best way to think of it. They only ever do it in inch, 1/2 inch, or 1/4 inch. All right. So it looks like I was right with my first guess, which is that this makes exactly 2 1/2 pints. Cranberry sauce is very, very sticky, especially with this amount of maple syrup that has been boiled down and concentrated. And so you really got to wipe these jars super clean, because any little speck of that maple syrup on here is going to keep the jars from sealing, and we don't want to do all this work and then not be able to seal our jars. Now that that's done, we're going to put our lids and our bands on, fingertip tight. And now we're going to stick these guys in this boiling water. I'm going to put this lid on, and we are going to water bath can these for 15 minutes. Our timer just went off, and so we're going to get these guys out of the water bath. Be careful not to tilt them. And we're just going to leave them on the counter here at least 12 hours, maybe 24. So while those cranberry cool, we are going to move on to our next recipe, which is, I'm so excited, our strawberry cheesecake cookies. I have been in a cheesecake mood lately. I finally found a cheesecake recipe that works and just works perfectly every single time. And so now I have a ton of cream cheese in my fridge, ready to go for cheesecakes, whatever. But I wanted to do something a little bit different today. I wanted to do a strawberry cheesecake cookie and see how that turns out. I've never done this recipe, so we're going to be doing it together to see how it goes. So the first thing it calls for is 6 ounces of cream cheese, which is just a little bit short of a full block of cream cheese. I left this out last night so that way it can come perfectly to room temperature, and so I'm going to put that in my mixer. You don't have to have a mixer. You could do this with a hand mixer, but you know, I'm lazy. I'm especially lazy today. Another thing you don't have to do is sift the powdered sugar, but my powdered sugar is has lots of lumps in it. I think, you know, just the humidity of living in Florida, you get lumps and stuff. The humidity happens. So I'm going to sift my powdered sugar. So I sifted my 1/3 cup of powdered sugar into my cream cheese, and now I'm going to stir it very lightly. So now we are going to get this cream cheese sugar mixture out of here, and we are going to put little dollops onto this tray right here with a little bit of parchment paper on it. And what we're going to do with this is we're going to actually put it in the freezer so that these little dollops of cream cheese all get frozen, because we're going to basically create a cookie around these frozen dollops of cream cheese. And so they need to be nice and hard and thick in order for our cookies to work. Now we're going to take these guys and stick them in the freezer down here. And they're going to need to chill for at least an hour to make sure that they're nice and hard. So while those chill, we're going to get started on the rest of the ingredients. We're going to cream some butter with some sugar. So it says to do 1 cup of butter, which is a lot of butter, but that is 2 sticks. We're going to stick them right back in our mixer. And to the butter, we're going to add 3/4 a cup of white sugar and 1/4 cup of brown sugar. So I got all my baking stuff out right here. We're going to grab our 1/4 measure. And we need 3 of these. And then 1 brown sugar, which brown sugar is just white sugar with molasses. So I added 1 full egg and 1 egg yolk. And now what we're going to be adding is our dry ingredients, and basically this is 2 3/4 cup all-purpose flour, and then I've added in 1/4 teaspoon of salt and a teaspoon of baking soda. So I'm just going to put some of it in first, because I don't want this huge plume to come up, which it probably will anyway. We're just going to slowly mix that in. The last ingredient for the cookies are some fresh strawberries. These were actually picked out of my garden. Most of my strawberries I freeze, but I did have a few that I have been saving from the garden. As you can see, our strawberries are starting to get smaller from the garden. So I know that that means that they're on their way out, which is sad, but we did get a lot of them and they're nice and frozen in the freezer. I use them for smoothies. I also use them for canning. So we're just gonna dice these up, not super small, but we don't want huge chunks of strawberries in our cookies. And I think I'm going to do this a little bit differently because the recipe says to fold it in. Now I have mixed up that dough a little bit and it is pretty hard, and I have a feeling that I'm just going to crush these strawberries if I do that. So I think what I'm going to do is, as I'm making the cookies, I think I'm going to just kind of put these on top or in the dough. Alright, so I'm going to turn this dough out onto this parchment paper because we need to make this into 12 very large cookies. So I'm going to kind of make it into a ball. Then I'm going to split that ball in half. Half of these are going to be the top half of the cookie and the bottom is going to be the other half. So I'm going to split this. It's going to make 12 cookies out of this. Okay. So we're going to make them into 12 circles. The recipe says to make a little indent in the cookie for the cream cheese to go. So I'm trying to keep these together. They're kind of crumbly, but they still have good texture. And that recipe does warn that they are going to be a little bit on the crumbly side. So I changed my mind halfway through doing the bottom cookies to realize that the strawberries are not going to go on later on. So I've incorporated them into the top half of the dough. I don't know how this is going to go, but we're going to see. The dough's kind of getting soft at this point, probably because I've been working it a little bit too much. So I'm just going to stick it in my fridge for a little while to let it cool down. I just checked our cream cheese and they are pretty solid at this point. Yep, they are very solid. So I'm just going to stick them in the little slots for the cookies. I'm pressing them down because they're bigger than what I expected. So I'm going to get these cookies back onto the sheet that the cream cheese was on and get it back into the freezer because I want to make sure that these cookies stay nice and cold. So the trick to getting that filling not to fall out of the cookie is to keep them cold. Let's get them back in the freezer. So I think the cookies have cooled enough for us to start working with them again. And we're going to do the same thing that we did with the bottom cookies. We're going to take this out and separate it into 12. Okay, that should be 12. Now we're going to roll them in a ball because we're going to stick these on top. All right, all we're going to do is set that cookie on top and kind of press around it so that it's covering the cream cheese. I have some pretty serious reservations about how these cookies are going to come out. I just can't imagine that that cream cheese is going to stay inside. But we're going to see. We're going to set our timer for 13 minutes and we'll see if it worked. Now we're going to move on to our chimichurri sauce. And if you've never had chimichurri sauce before, chimichurri sauce I believe is from Argentina, if I'm correct. And it is like a condiment, right? In a lot of ways it reminds me of pesto, but it doesn't taste like pesto. It's kind of like an herby vinaigrette type dressing, and I absolutely love to put it on top of my steaks, on top of cooked chicken or fish. You could also put it on roasted vegetables. You don't want to, well, I don't know. I've never tried this, but I normally don't put it on while I'm cooking. I always add it on afterwards as like a sauce. You could also do this recipe and use it in soups, pastas. It would be amazing in a pasta salad. And we have a lot to make. So far I have chopped up 4 cups of parsley, and I'm gonna go ahead and just do 1 more cup to make it an even 5. You could do this in a food processor, but my food processor grinds everything down to essentially nothing, especially herbs. So you don't want that. You want this to have some texture to it. So I am hand chopping it. It doesn't really take that long. And I'm probably going to end up dehydrating the rest of this because this is way more than I thought it would end up being. I'm going to add the 5 cups to my bowl right here. We're also going to mince up an onion. I don't think this is traditional to use a shallot or an onion, but I think it would be good. We're going to do quite a bit of garlic. I think I'm just going to do this whole head. We're going to get all this minced up nice and fine. Like that. Then we're going to chop up this red cherry pepper, but I'm going to try it first. You guys know I'm not a huge fan of spice, but I do want this to have a little bit, tiny bit. So we're going to take a try. So I tasted the pepper, and it's pretty spicy. Much more than I thought it was going to be. So I don't think we're going to use this pepper. Let me try it one more time. Just taking a tiny little bit. Actually, it's not that bad. It's not that bad. And one tiny little pepper in this whole thing, probably you won't even notice it, which is what I'm going for. So we're just going to go ahead and use this guy. I hate taking something out of the garden without having a plan for it, so hopefully it doesn't make it too spicy. It's only 1 pepper. It's like 5 cups of parsley. So I can't imagine it's going to be that spicy. Y'all, I can't even believe it. The cookies actually stayed together, although I probably put them way too close together. You gotta see this. The cream cheese did not come out. Check out those cookies. They're like little pillows of happiness. And the cream cheese did stay in. You can start to see some of it coming out right there, but it's in there. So I think once I allow these to cool all the way and maybe stick them in the fridge for an hour or so, I bet you they're gonna be like perfect, which is pretty shocking. I didn't think that cream cheese would stay inside, but it did. The next step for our chimichurri sauce is we're gonna put in the rest of the ingredients. And so I don't even know what this is, a 10 times batch. So the regular batch calls for half a cup of parsley. I'm using 5, which makes this 10 times the recipe. Normally the recipe calls for 3 tablespoons of red wine. 1 cup of red wine has 16 tablespoons. I need 30. 30 tablespoons, so that's 2 cups. This is crazy. I'll make sure to put the recipes down in the description below so that you can get any of these. The strawberry cookies, the chimichurri, or the ball cranberry sauce recipe. Then it calls for a teaspoon of salt. So once again, we're doing a lot more. So we're doing a 10 times batch. And so if this says 1 teaspoon of salt, there's 3 teaspoons in a tablespoon. So we need 10 divided by 3. We need 3.5 tablespoons. I'm just going to do a heaping tablespoon on the last one. A teaspoon of oregano. So once again, we're going to do 3 tablespoons. I really overdid this recipe. Half a teaspoon of black pepper. So that's going to be almost 2 tablespoons. Our last step is the olive oil, and this calls for a lot. Usually it's 2/3 of a cup, but since I did a huge amount here, it's going to be a lot more. I think it's supposed to be 6 cups, so 3 of these. I'm gonna check it and make sure that it looks right. It is supposed to be oily. It is kind of an oily sauce, but I don't like mine to be especially thick with oil. So if you see here, it has quite a bit of oil. And if I would have added another 2 cups, I'm feeling like this probably would have been way too much. Would have been odd. So I'm going to stick with just that. Now it doesn't really last a long time in the fridge, maybe 3 or 4 days. So I am going to put a little bit in the fridge in a jar just so that we can use it in the next few days. But the rest of them, I'm going to freeze it, and I'm going to freeze it in ice cube trays. Ice cube trays are probably one of my favorite ways to preserve herbs. So let's get off our little bit that we are going to put in the fridge for ourselves. It smells amazing. I can't even describe what it smells like. It's so good. So now what I'm going to do to preserve this is I'm going to pour it probably about, looks like about 1.5 tablespoons into each of the little ice cube trays. That got us 3 ice cube trays filled to the top. So I'm gonna get these out into the freezer. I have some to go in the fridge for dinner tonight. And we're gonna wait 24 hours with these guys in the freezer before we pop them out, and then we put them in a plastic baggie or a reusable baggie. But you want them to be frozen solid before you pop them out of here. So at least 24 hours. I really enjoyed spending the day with you guys today. I hope you did as well. Before we go though, we have to open up this cookie and see what it looks like on the inside. So Let's give it a shot. Oh, look at that. That worked perfectly. Wow. I'm not a really good baker. Let's see. Y'all, that is heaven. Oh my gosh. I thought my oatmeal raisins were my very best cookies, but no, not anymore. These definitely have them beat. I hope you enjoyed the video today, guys. If you want to watch more of my videos between now and my next upload, I'm going to throw them up here, here, and here. Take care and happy gardening, happy cooking, happy baking, guys.